Oh, hello there. I was just reading some of this amazing book by the YouTuber Stuart Ashen called Attack of the Flickering Skeletons. You should definitely pick this one up at some point if you get a chance. Now, I'm sure you're here for some video game action, so in this episode, I'm going to be counting down my favourite Capcom arcade games.
The Punisher is a fantastic side-scrolling beat-em-up based on the Marvel comic book. You take control of the Punisher Frank Castle, who teams up with Nick Fury when in two-player mode, as they look to take down the criminal mastermind, the Kingpin. The game has a very recognisable feel to it, and the style is closely modelled after previous Capcom games in the genre. The combat is smooth and fast-paced, and relies just as much on weapons as it does hand-to-hand combat. The Punisher is definitely one of my favourite games based on a comic book. It looks and sounds awesome, plays well, and is a great example of the scrolling beat-em-up genre. At number 9, I've chosen MERCS, a top-down run-and-gun game which was the follow-up to Capcom's 1985 arcade hit Commando. Up to 3 players are tasked with rescuing the former US president who has been kidnapped. You start off armed with a standard gun and a limited-use special attack, as you gun down waves of on-foot enemies, tanks, and other forms of heavy weaponry. Along the way, you can pick up more powerful weapons and even take vehicles for a spin, just to liven things up a bit. Although MERCS feels like a very short game, it's something I always love going back to for a bit of mindless blasting. At number 8, I've chosen 1988's Ghouls and Ghosts. Now I'm sure we're all aware of just how difficult and frustrating this game can be, and I'm by no means an expert at it. In fact, capturing footage for this game was an absolute nightmare, especially being so used to the double jump feature introduced in the Super Nintendo game. Feelings of horror aside, Ghouls and Ghosts is a superb side-scrolling action platform game. The graphics and music create an incredible atmosphere as all manner of scary beasts attempt to 1. Break your armor, and 2. Break your bones. It's one of those games that has you striving to make it just that little bit further, and those who are persistent enough will eventually get their reward. At number 7, we have the first Street Fighter game on my list, Street Fighter Alpha 2, released in 1996. Now I could have chosen Alpha 3 instead of this one, as technically it is a better game, but there is just something about the second game that immediately draws me in every time. It just feels more like a traditional Street Fighter game. Sure, it doesn't have as many characters, but the simple nature of this title definitely appeals more. The backgrounds are memorable, the soundtrack is superb, and the iconic intro sequence is one of my favourites in any arcade game. I've stuck with the Street Fighter series at number 6 with Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. It took me a while to adjust to Street Fighter 3 when it came out, probably due to the massive changes in the character roster, but by the time Third Strike came out, I began to fully appreciate it. The game just has so much character, with beautiful backgrounds, detailed characters, and an incredible soundtrack. The gameplay is balanced and smooth, and everything just gels together perfectly. It's one of my favourite one-on-one fighting games ever, and still gets a lot of regular playtime. I've gone with another one-on-one fighting game at number 5, Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter. I feel the series peaked with this entry, as I prefer the tag team matches over Marvel vs Capcom 2's 3-on-3 setup. The Capcom side of the roster focuses on Street Fighter, which reduces novelty characters in the lineup which we would see in later games in the series. The backgrounds are bold, colourful and detailed, and the individual character theme songs are top-notch. As far as crossover fighting games go, they don't get much better than this. I've gone with Strider as my pick for number 4, as it's a game I spent a lot of time playing growing up, mostly with the Mega Drive version, but also in the arcade when possible. There really isn't anything quite like Strider in my eyes. It's one of those games that just nailed everything, from the graphics and stage design to the iconic boss encounters and incredible soundtrack. Strider is a challenging, slick and stylish game, and is always a pleasure to play through. At number 3, I've chosen Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Capcom's 1993 scrolling beat-em-up is definitely one of the greatest games in the genre, providing fantastic character variety, a simple but effective control system, and an awesome array of weapons to pick up and use against your enemies. The game is based upon a comic book and cartoon series, where up to 3 players can take part in a mission to take down a gang of dinosaur hunters. After playing Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, it quickly became one of my favourite arcade games, so it was incredibly disappointing that it never received a home port of any kind. Now this was a very difficult choice. Having to place one of the most iconic arcade games of all time at number 2 feels like a crime. But here it is, Final Fight. Being one of my most memorable experiences in the arcade, Final Fight has always been one of my favourite games, and I put a lot of time into it when I was young. Whether in the arcade, on the watered down SNES port, or the amazing Mega CD adaptation. Every stage feels like an iconic set piece, featuring memorable locations and momentous boss battles. Final Fight is definitely one of my most fondly remembered arcade games, and only just misses the number 1 spot on my list. It just had to be Street Fighter 2 Turbo at number 1. It's still my favourite one-on-one fighting game to this day, and is just as much fun to play now as it was back then. I was obsessed with Street Fighter 2 in the early 90s, and played hours upon hours of the Super Nintendo and arcade games. So when Turbo came along, it was like a dream. The increased speed, the air hurricane kicks, the new colour variants, it had absolutely everything. Now many people would probably choose Super Street Fighter 2 over this one, but the killer blow has to be the music. It's the one thing that really disappointed me in the Super editions. So even though it has less characters, Turbo definitely has the edge. It's the definitive one-on-one fighter, a timeless classic and my favourite Capcom arcade game. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below and subscribe to the channel for future content.